The wind had a way of singing across the winter-struck prairie lawn, low notes that made a man wonder if the land itself was mourning the cold. On Christmas Eve, as dusk bled into the icy horizon, the McAllister ranch lay quiet under a skin of frost. Snow pressed against the fence rails, clung to the windowsills, and creaked beneath the boots of anyone foolish enough to wander out after dark. Cade McAllister stood on his porch with his collar turned high, breath-steaming lantern held up against the growing night. He'd lived 36 years under this big, unforgiving sky, and if the land had taught him one thing, it was that Christmas Eve storms rarely meant anything good. "Pa!" A small voice called from inside. "Is he coomin'?" Cade looked over his shoulder. His son looked 10 years old, and trying desperately to act like 12 hovered in the doorway, a nervous silhouette against the firelight. Behind him, his little sister, Emma, clutched a rag doll and tried to peer around her brother's shoulder. "He'll be here," Cade said, though he wasn't truly sure. Sheriff Duggan had promised to stop by with a bundle of mail he'd been holding for bad weather, mostly catalog pages and a Christmas card from Cade's sister in Kansas City. Nothing urgent, nothing that had to be delivered tonight, except Duggan had known the kids were hopeful. And Duggan, for all his grumbling, didn't break promises. Still, this wind didn't feel right. Cade stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. "Storm's picking up. Y'all stay close to the fire." Emma tugged her braid. "Pa, is Santa still cumin'?" "He's weatherproof," Cade said, tapping her nose with a gloved finger. "And stubborn, just like your brother." Luke scowled. "Ain't stubborn." Emma grinned. "R2. Cade let their bickering fill the cabin with simple noise, comfortable noise. It was a welcome change from the quiet that had haunted them since May, since the illness that took their mother like a candle snuffed in the wind. 7 months hadn't dulled the ache, just changed its shape. On nights like this, grief could sit at the table later. Tonight, he needed to cook. The cabin smelled of simmering stew and sourdough biscuits warming by the fire. Cade lifted the lid on the pot, steam fogging his face. Venison, carrots, potato, simple, filling, what they could afford. He tasted it, nodded, then set the ladle aside. A knock slammed against the door. The children froze. Another knock harder, this time followed by the faintest trembling voice. "Please, someone please help." Cade's pulse kicked hard. That wasn't the sheriff, thought he moved fast. Gun from the wall, lantern from the counter. He motioned the kids behind the table, their practiced place whenever a stranger came to call. Out here, folks didn't always knock for good reasons. Cade unlatched the door but kept the chain. "What's your business?" he called. Snow swirled, wind howled, and there, crumpled against the porch rail, half fallen, was a woman. A young one, maybe late 20s, with tangled hair, torn gloves, and a coat so thin it was practically paper. Her lips were blue, her eyes barely open. I'm sorry," she whispered. "Haven't eaten in 2 days. Couldn't keep walking. I saw your light." Her breath puffed weakly. She wavered and collapsed into a heap. "Pa!" Emma cried. Cade didn't think twice. He kicked the door open and knelt beside the woman. Her skin burned with fever and froze with cold all at once. She was shaking so hard he could hear her teeth chatter over the wind. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" A faint nod. Barely. Cade scooped her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, bones in desperation. Inside, Luke cleared a chair, while Emma dragged a quilt from the bedroom. Cade laid the woman near the fire, unwrapping her damp, icy coat. Her clothes beneath were ragged, not travel-worn, life-worn. "What happened to her?" Emma whispered, clutching her doll to her chest. "Storm caught her wrong," Cade said, though he knew storms didn't tear clothes like that. Luke frowned. "Pa, that ain't just weather." Cade hushed him gently. Later, the woman tried to sit up, but her body wouldn't obey. Cade pressed a hand to her shoulder. "Stay still. You're safe. Name's Cade McAllister. This here's my home." She blinked up at him, dazed. I didn't mean to trouble you." "You ain't trouble. You're freezing." Cade grabbed the kettle from the hearth, poured hot water into a cup, added honey. He held it to her lips, and she drank with tiny, desperate sips. Emma crept closer. "Pa, can she have stew?" "Not yet," Cade murmured. "Let her warm from the inside first." Luke crouched beside him. "Should I fetch the doctor?" "Doc's 2 hours north, in weather clear enough to see the moon," Cade said. "Storm's closing fast. She stays here tonight." The woman made a faint sound protest. "Maybe," but Cade shook his head. "Don't argue. You'll lose." She exhaled, a small, grateful breath. "What's your name?" Cade asked. Her eyes dropped. Nora, what brought you out in this weather? Nora, she flinched almost imperceptibly, but Cade noticed. Had to leave. I was headed for Fort Garland. Brother lives there, but the coach left without me. I tried to catch up on foot. Her voice cracked. Ran out of food. Luke stabbed a look at Cade that clearly said, "Pa, she's hiding something." Cade knew it too. But you didn't interrogate a freezing woman on Christmas Eve. You fed her. You warmed her. You waited until morning. Still he kept his hand near the rifle, leaning against the table leg. Kindness didn't mean foolishness. "Luke," Cade said, "bring another log for the fire." Luke obeyed, though his eyes never left Nora. Emma, however, sidled right up to her, gentle as a kitten. "You can have my quilt," she declared. "Mama made it." Cade's chest tightened. He opened his mouth to gently redirect her, but Nora's eyes filled at the sight of the tiny girl tucking the hand-stitched quilt around her shivering legs. "Thank you," Nora whispered. Emma smiled. "It's soft and warm. Pa says quilts hold stories. Maybe it'll hold yours till you're better." Cade turned back to the stew pot before his emotions gave him away. "All right," he said, voice low. "Let's get you something small to eat." He ladled a thin broth into a cup and handed it to Nora. She gripped it with both hands, as though the warmth alone could anchor her to the earth. "I owe you more than." Cade cut her off with a gentle shake of his head. "Nobody owes anything on Christmas Eve." The woman's eyes glistened. She sipped, slowly, cautiously, as if savoring each swallow. Outside, the wind slammed against the cabin walls like a fist. Luke watched it with a scowl. "Storms only getting worse." Cade nodded. "We'll ride out the night." When the fire crackled low, he added, "Wood." When Nora leaned too far, he righted her. When her eyes drooped, he let her rest. It wasn't long before she fell asleep, wrapped in Emma's quilt, a faint smile weak, but relieved crossing her lips. Emma leaned against Cade's leg. "Is she gonna be okay?" "I'll do everything I can." "Did Santa bring her?" Emma asked hopefully. Cade swallowed a laugh. Not sure she'd call this much of a gift. Emma shrugged. "Maybe she just needed someone." Cade rubbed her small shoulder. "Maybe we all do." Behind him, Luke whispered, "You think someone hurt her?" Cade glanced at Nora's torn clothing, her bruised wrists, the unmistakable marks of someone who'd been grabbed too hard. His jaw tightened. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I think someone did, and if he comes looking." Cade stood, firelight catching the hardness in his blue eyes. "Then he'll find I ain't in the business of giving back what evil men lose." The storm wailed outside, a lonely, haunted sound, but inside, the fire glowed warm. Supper simmered. The cabin held a stranger who'd nearly frozen under God's empty sky, and Cade McAllister, widower, father, rancher, watched over her with the quiet resolve of a man who had lost too much to ignore suffering when it knocked on his door. Christmas Eve had brought them more than wind and cold. It had brought a mystery, a warning, and a woman whose past would change everything. By the time dawn crept over the prairie, the storm had blown itself into silence. The world outside the cabin lay buried beneath a soft, white hush. Snow stretched to the horizon, glittering like powdered glass in the pale morning light. But inside, the warmth of the fire still held strong. Cade had slept in the rocking chair by the hearth, rifle propped nearby, boots still on. He wasn't a man who slept deeply even in good weather. And with a stranger in his home, one who carried bruises that told a story. She refused to speak. He'd slept lighter than ever. A soft stirring pulled him from his half-doze. Nora shifted beneath Emma's quilt, blinking as though the world was still too bright. Her breathing was easier now. The blue had left her lips. She was alive in a way she hadn't been when she collapsed on his porch. Cade stood and poured a cup of warm water. "You're awake." His voice was low, gentle, the way he used to speak to his wife after nights of fever. Nora nodded faintly. "I feel like I've slept a week, more like 8 hours." He offered the cup. "Sip slow." She obeyed, hands still trembling but stronger than last night. Emma padded from the bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Her doll dangled from one hand. When she saw Nora awake, she gasped softly. "You didn't die." Cade shot her a look. "Emma." Nora laughed, a soft breath of sound that held both surprise and delight. "I'm very much alive, thanks to all of you." Emma climbed onto the rug and sat cross-legged beside her. "Pa says you're staying till the storm's gone." Cade cleared his throat. "Well, it'll be safer once you're fully healed. No sense rushing out into knee-high snow." Nora looked toward the window, the frost pattern sparkling like delicate lace. I didn't expect kindness like this. You knocked, Emma said simply. We answered. Luke came out next, already dressed to feed the horses. He slowed when he saw Nora awake, his expression a complicated mix of suspicion and relief. How you feelin', ma'am? He asked. Better, Nora said. Much better. Luke nodded and crossed his arms. Good cause, PA said. If you died, he'd make me dig the grave. Emma stiffened. He did not. Cade rubbed his temples. I did not. Nora smiled again, weary still, but warmer now. Your children are honest? That's a polite word for them. Cade muttered. Breakfast simmered on the stove, corn mush, biscuits, leftover stew. Cade served Nora last, preparing a smaller plate out of caution, but she ate as though each bite was saving her life. When she finished, she sat back in the chair and breathed deeply, her eyes drifting closed. Ma'am, Cade said softly, you ready to tell me who you're running from? Nora opened her eyes slowly. The cabin seemed to quiet around her. She touched the fading bruise on her wrist. I left Denver 3 days ago. I had work at a seamstress shop there. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I kept to myself. I stayed out of trouble. She swallowed, pain flickering through her voice. A man, Clay Rourke decided, I was something he could own. He started coming by the shop every day, first with gifts, then threats. Then he stopped pretending. Cade's face darkened. Luke stopped pretending not to listen. One night, Nora continued, he told me I'd be staying with him whether I wanted to or not. I waited until he'd had too much to drink and slipped out. I packed only what I could carry. I knew if I stayed, he'd find me. And if I ran, she shook her head. He has money, men who follow orders. I didn't have much chance. Cade stepped closer, voice low and steady. Did he hurt you? Nora hesitated, but then she nodded. He grabbed me when I tried to tell him no, said he'd make me change my mind. I managed to break free and ran before he could do worse. Emma pressed her hands to her mouth. Bad man. Very bad. Luke agreed, jaw tight. Cade's breath moved slow and controlled. A man who had seen violence before, and could do it again if necessary. You're safe here, he said. Nobody's taking you from my home. Nora stared into the fire. He'll come looking. He always does. Let him try, Cade said. Snow's deep as a horse's belly. Sheriff Duggan's a half-day's ride away, and this ranch sits miles off any travel road. No one finds it unless they're meant to. Luke's eyes sharpened. Should I saddle the mare? Check the trails. Not yet, Cade said. Storm's fresh. Nobody's getting far in this. But Cade's mind worked. If Rourke was tracking her, he'd come eventually. And Christmas or not, Cade would protect what was under his roof. The sun was high dusty gold behind thinning clouds when the dogs barked. Suddenly, sharply, Ryder appeared at the far edge of the property, horse slogging through snow, coat billowing. Cade's hand went to his rifle. Luke, watching from the loft window, called down, One Ryder, come in fast. Nora went pale. Cade motioned her behind the bedroom door. Stay out of sight. She obeyed immediately. The rider slowed near the porch, raising one hand. McAllister. Sheriff Duggan's unmistakable drawl carried over the snow. Relief loosened Cade's shoulders. He opened the door with a grunt. Sheriff, you're out early for Christmas Day. Duggan dismounted with a wince. Storm had me hunkered at the outpost all night. Figured I'd deliver your Christmas mail before heading home. But his tone lowered. Words travelin'. There's a man searching these roads. Dangerous type. Cade's jaw tightened. Name of Clay Rourke. Duggan grimaced. So you heard? Nora's here. A long, heavy silence followed. Inside, Duggan asked carefully. She came half dead in the storm, Cade said. I wasn't about to let her freeze. Duggan looked past him into the cabin. You know what kind of man Rourke is. He's got money, hired guns, folks who lie for him, and I got a good rifle, Cade replied. The sheriff huffed. That you do. Nora stepped quietly into view, wrapped in Emma's quilt. She looked small, fragile, but her chin lifted with quiet courage. Sheriff, she said, voice steady. I'm not going back. You shouldn't, Duggan said. Man like Rourke doesn't get to claim a woman like property, but law's messy when a man's got coin. Cade's voice hardened. Law's clear enough on my ranch. Duggan sighed. Then I'll do what I can. Ride to Garland, warn the deputies, block the roads. But Cade, he met the rancher's eyes. Watch your back. Cade nodded once. Always do. The sheriff left, hooves crunching through deep snow. When the sound faded, Nora turned to Cade. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought danger to your door. Cade shook his head. You brought yourself to my door. That ain't danger, that's fate. By evening, the cabin felt different, more alive. Nora helped cook supper, her hands steady now, her cheeks glowing with a hint of color. She laughed softly when Emma insisted on showing her how to braid doll hair. Luke watched her cautiously at first, but even he warmed by the time she helped him mend a rip in his work shirt. Cade observed all of it quietly, thoughtfully. It had been a long time since a woman's voice had filled this cabin. Longer still, since laughter sounded like healing instead of memory. But just as warmth settled in, a new sound broke it. Apart, footsteps, crunching through snow, slow, heavy, approaching from the ridge east of the barn. Luke stiffened. Pa, that ain't the sheriff. Cade grabbed his rifle. Get Nora to the back room. Emma, stay with her. Nora's eyes widened with fear, but she nodded, ushering the children behind her. Cade stepped out onto the porch, lantern in one hand, rifle in the other. A shadow moved 30 yards out, a man broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat, the kind of coat worn by someone who didn't care how cold the world was. Evening, the stranger called. His voice had an oily confidence that made Cade's blood chill. Name's Clay Rourke. I believe you've got something of mine. Cade didn't lower his rifle. Ain't got anything of yours. Rourke smiled, sharp and ugly. A woman, brown hair, thin, runs fast but not fast enough. His eyes glinted. She belongs to me. She belongs to no one. Rourke's smile widened. Then why's she hiding? Cade cocked the rifle. You came a long way for nothing, Mr. Rourke stepped closer. You stand between me and what's mine. You'll regret it. Cade's voice dropped lower than the winter wind. Step 1 foot closer, and the only thing you'll regret is breathing near my door. The prairie held its breath. The two men faced each other, cold, silent, the weight of the land pressing down like judgment. Rourke's hand twitched toward his coat. Cade pulled the hammer back. A deadly click pierced the cold. Rourke froze. You shoot me. Rourke snarled. My men'll. You came alone, Cade said. Storm covered your trail. Snow's too deep for a posse. You're cold, tired, and stupid. Rourke's jaw twitched. He hadn't realized Cade knew the land better than anyone alive. Cade tilted the rifle toward the distant ridge. Get off my property. Ride back into the world. And don't you dare let your shadow fall across my fence again. Rourke stared, fury boiling beneath his skin. But even a coward knew when a real man meant every word. He backed away, boots crunching slow, deliberate steps. This ain't over, he growled. Cade lifted the rifle another inch. It is for you. Rourke mounted his horse, spit into the snow, and rode toward the ridge until the storm-swollen wind swallowed him whole. Cade stood there long after he disappeared, listening, making sure he wouldn't circle back. Inside, Nora waited, trembling but unbroken. When Cade stepped into the warmth, she looked up, breath held. He's gone, Cade said. Nora's knees weakened. Emma hugged her. Luke lowered his knife and nodded to his father with silent respect. Cade exhaled long and slow. You're safe, he said. For as long as you stay here, you're safe. Tears slipped down Nora's cheeks, not of fear, but relief. Thank you, she whispered. You saved my life. Cade stepped closer, voice steady as the earth beneath them. No, ma'am. You saved your own by no. I just answered.